So if you've been watching the Humanist Report for a long time, I've talked about how the DNC and the Democratic Party tried to delegitimize Bernie Sanders and smear Bernie Sanders, and recently I've been talking about the plethora of arbitrary attacks they've been using against Keith Ellison to defeat him in his bid to be the next DNC chair. Well, there's a new article that was published in The Week that I think does a fantastic job at showing just how grotesque the Democrats have been and the dirty tricks that they've employed to try to defeat Keith Ellison. So they explain, the White House reportedly did not like the choice of Ellison. A series of objections materialized and Perez entered the race. First, they said the DNC chair should be a full-time job, so Ellison dutifully promised to resign from Congress should he win. Then, liberals dredged up a bunch of opposition research from decades ago. In the 90s, Ellison had defended Louis Farrakhan, the controversial leader of the religious group Nation of Islam, then recanted and apologized. On cue, Clinton megadonor Haim Saban called him an anti-Semite. As Alex Shepard writes at New Republic, the odd thing about this is that Perez is also a pretty strong left-winger and a Latino. He could easily have challenged Ellison on the merits alone, but instead, centrist liberals are trying to beat Ellison with a lot of cheap shots. It smacks very much of Clinton's campaign against Sanders, which leveraged right-wing propaganda about single-payer, or her campaign against Obama in 2008, which had odious racist and Islamophobic undertones. And this last aspect is particularly nauseating. Ellison is a Muslim, the first ever elected to Congress, and Donald Trump just won the presidency partly on the back of shockingly bigoted rhetoric about Islam. Many centrist liberals are palpably uncomfortable with allowing a black Muslim to run the party in such circumstances. As one longtime Obama political ally told Politico's Glenn Thrush, is he really the guy we need right now when we are trying to get all of those disaffected white working class people to rally around our message of economic equality? This also smacks of Clintonite politics. In 1992, Bill Clinton famously triangulated against black radicals, and in 2008, Hillary argued that you need to cater to white identity politics to get enough white voters to win. But President Obama himself already decisively disproved the strong version of this thesis, rolling up enough working class voters of all races with a powerful working class message. 1/3 of his 2012 coalition was made up of whites without a college degree, to win convincingly twice. It's worth noting as well that Ellison's congressional district is 63% white, which he won by 47 points in the election. On the other hand, as Jeff Stein argues at Vox, beating back one of Bernie Sanders' most high-profile allies with an underhanded campaign is no small political risk either. Many Sanders supporters are already quite annoyed at how the DNC was obviously in the tank for Clinton during the primary, and the fact that Ellison and Perez are quite close ideologically only adds to the frustration. It seems as though Ellison is unacceptable only because he didn't kiss the right rings during the primary. It risks reopening the primary divide at a terribly unfortunate time and further alienating young voters for no real substantive reason. So there's a lot in there. Now, I do take issue with one portion. They claim that Ellison and Perez are ideologically close, and even though Perez does have more progressive policy positions than other centrist Democrats, so for example, to be fair to him, he does support the Fight for 15, well, he's a corporatist in many other ways. So, for example, he vehemently advocated for the TPP. He went against labor unions as the labor secretary to fight for the TPP, and he couldn't explain why he supported it and undermine the desire of labor unions to defeat this corrupt trade bill. Now, also, he's indicated that he doesn't want to ban lobbyists from contributing to the DNC. That makes them completely different. The difference is night and day, in my opinion, honestly, between corporatism and progressivism. The difference is very clear, so I see a strong difference there. And what's interesting here is that after the DNC and the Democratic Party's attempts to smear Bernie Sanders supporters as sexist Bernie bros during the primaries, we could play that same game right now. We can say that anyone who's against Keith Ellison is a racist Islamophobe, but we're not doing that because we can win on the merits alone. We can win based on the policy substance. And the reason why Democrats are resorting to these types of smear tactics is because they have no policy substance. They don't want someone from the progressive wing of the party to win. They don't want someone who is going to strip donors of the power in the party because they like all those contributions. They think it's easier to beat Republicans if they can take unlimited sums of money from super PACs. But Bernie Sanders has demonstrated that you cannot have a super PAC and you could still be successful. His campaign was unprecedented. I mean, he ran against the Clinton machine, and he overcame a 60-point deficit. He captured 46% of the vote, and this was in spite of the unfair conditions that was the Democratic primary. It was a disaster. It was a disgrace. But Bernie Sanders almost overcame the odds in spite of that. So this notion that you need donations from large corporations to win, it's complete and utterly bullshit now, and Bernie Sanders proved that it's bullshit, but the Democratic Party hasn't learned their lesson. They don't want to change, and so they're resorting to these dirty, cheap shots against Keith Ellison because they know that's the only way they can try to defeat him. Well, I've got news for you guys. If you defeat Keith Ellison, you're going to be the real losers in the end, because the Democratic Party, they have to change. If you don't change, you will not win, you will not defeat Republicans, and you certainly will not defeat Donald Trump in 2020. So you're going to be the real losers in the end, and you're going to lose all of your constituents to the Green Party or the Libertarian Party if you don't wake the fuck up. So Keith Ellison is the only choice for the DNC, and I wanted to share this story because I think that we have to be wary of these dirty tricks that the Democratic Party tries to employ, also they can win. Well, how about this? Why don't you represent the people and try to win based on that for once?
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.